Whether you are a beginner or looking to enhance your skills, this step-by-step guide will take you through the entire process of building robust and scalable APIs. In next 2 hours, we are going to learn everything you need to create REST APIs using Node, Express, Postgres, and SequelizeORM. So let's have a quick look what we are going to learn at the end of this video. So we'll start from first the project setup, then we will work on creating the Express server, then we'll do the Postman setup to test the APIs, then we will work on project folder structure to organize the code in different folders. Then we will set up the environment. Then we'll set up SequelizeORM to perform DB operations. Then we will generate our first model and migration file. Then we'll work on signup process. Then we will work on password validation and encryption. Then we will work on JsonWebToken. Then we'll work on login process. Then we will work on Express global error handler to control all the errors messages from one place for different environment. Then we will do the code refactoring. After that, we will work on validation and construction. Then authentication, authorization, association, seeder, and so many more things we are going to cover. So watch this video till the very end. I have already pushed this code into the GitHub repository and you can get this link from my description. So at any point of time, if you're stuck, you wanted to check my code, you can come here and have a look. And you could also install this project into your local environment. It's very easy. You just need to add this environment variable inside your projects. I have already given sample.env. So just rename this file to .env and fill all the missing information here, and then you just need to run these three commands. So this will install all the packages and this command will do the migration. This will create all the table into your databases and then this will feed the default data into the table so you could start using application and then you can enjoy my application. So hi guys, it's me Tarique Akhtar Ansari. So let's start this video. So the first thing you need to do is you need to install the Node.js. You can install from this official websites. I'll give all the links in the description so you can follow those links to download Node.js. Now the next thing, I'm going to use Postman for testing the API. So you can download the Postman by searching on Google and follow this link to download. And the final thing, like I'll use VS Code editor for writing the Express code. So you can download and install and you can follow me. But it's up to you if you want to follow some other editors. It's completely fine, no problem. So now let's start. Let's go to the folder where you want to create your project. So I'm inside the D folder. Let's create a folder here. Let's name it Marcos. I love this name. So let's go inside this folder and open the command prompt cmd. Let's initialize the project here npm init -y. So the package.json file created. Let's open the VS Code on the same folder, code dot. Now you can make sure that we are inside the Marcos folder. So let's open the terminal first and let's cut the welcome screen. Now here you could see we are inside the Marcos folder. So let's install the Express first. npm install Express. So Express installed successfully. Now let's create a file here, app.js. Now let's quickly import the Express package. Why? Express. Now let's create the Express app equal to Express. Perfect. Now let's create a route to check that it's working. Oops. App.get slash, and let's take two things, request response. It has one as optional parameter. Next we'll discuss later on. So let's take request and response and give a response from here. Response dot, it has status as well. You can give explicitly the status 200, but if you don't specify, by default your response will go on status 200. Let's give response on JSON format, status colon success and message. Oh, REST APIs are working. Perfect. Now let's run this application. Node app.js. Oops. Okay, so we need to call express function. Perfect. Let's clear this and now run it. Now we need to do one more thing, app.listen. So it will start listening on some port. So I'm giving here 3000 and it receives a callback function. So let's do console.log server up and running. Perfect. Now let's run it again. Now start listening on port 3000. So let's quickly check. We could check on browser as well. If we hit localhost 3000, here we could see status is working. But usually we don't hit the APIs from the browser. We have the Postman tool that we will use. So let's create a folder. We call it here collections. So let's create a blank collection here. Name it as Marcos. Let's add a test request here. Click on the folder, add request, name it test, and make sure the method is get because we created the get route. Let's add http localhost 3000 and hit. Now here we could see the response in JSON format, success and message working. So our Express app start working. Now let's start creating the folder structure. So the first folder I wanted to create here is controller. So this folder will be responsible for like all the controllers. So we'll control the R Express app logic from here. Now let's create one more file folder actually route. So this will be responsible for handling all the routes. Let's create the controller first. So inside this, create a new file auth controller.js. So all the auth related things I'll keep inside here, like sign up, login, reset password, and other stuffs here. So let's create a function here like sign up, and it will take three things: request, response, and optional next function. So just for now, let's give a response from here like response start JSON status success message sign up routes are working. Just giving to check. Now we need to export this module so that we could use module.exports, and let's export inside the object sign up so that in future if we create login, reset password and others, so we could also like add inside this object and we could export it from here. Perfect. Now let's go to the route folder and create a file auth route.js. So this file will be responsible for all the routes related to like sign up, login, reset and others. So all the auth related routes. So let's quickly create a router const router equal to require express router and it is a function. Perfect. Now let's define the route here router.route and the route will be slash sign up, and this route we could add different methods like get, post and others. So let's define the post for now and we'll call this sign up controller. This sign up from the controller. If you remember from the auth, we defined there, right? This sign up and we're sending the response from here. Fine. Now let's export module.exports equal to router, because we just need to export the router. That's all from now. Now this file will take all the request from here and will transfer to the controller, and controller will do the business logic. But this file is not connected with app.js file, so right now this is not going to work. So we need to connect this from here. So let's connect it. So I'm giving a comment here. All routes will be here. So let's quickly add app.use, and I'm giving like API slash v1 slash auth, and let's add the auth router here. So like let's import that first. Const auth router equal to require route auth route. Perfect. Now let's pass this to here. So now what will happen, if we request to API slash auth, it will transfer to this, and then it will match to the signup. So, and it will transfer to this controller and will give the responses from here. Perfect. Now let's go to the Postman and create one more route. Oops. Click on three dots, add request, name it sign up. Let's quickly add this sign up http colon double slash localhost API slash v1 slash auth slash sign up, and this will be the post method. Perfect. Just hit for now and check, are we getting the responses? So we're getting some error, cannot find API slash v1 slash auth slash sign up. So let's quickly see that why. Oh, so this is because we need to restart the application. So every time we do the changes, our application is not going to restart automatically. So how we could fix this issue? So we have one package which is called nodemon. So let's install npm install hyphen hyphen save hyphen dev nodemon. Perfect. Now let's install this. So nodemon installed successfully. Let's check. So it is installed as a dev dependency. Let's add one scripts here like start colon dev. If we write this command, then nodemon app.js. Perfect. Now let's clear and run the command npm run start colon dev. Perfect. Server up and running. Now let's go to the Postman and hit this. Now here you could see sign up routes are working. So our structure started working and it is started taking in shape. Now let's do one more thing. So we don't pass this named like the value directly here. We keep all these values inside the .env file. So we keep all the sensitive informations like username, password, these things inside the .env, and we use the environment variables here. So let's quickly add .env file. So for that we need to add one more package. So let's do that. npm install .env. Now .env packages get installed. Now let's create .env file. .env. Perfect. Now we can uh, add here like app underscore port equal to 3000, and we'll use this variable inside here like using process.env.app.port. Now this will not work. We need to make sure that our app.js file knows about this. Our application knows about this .env file. So let's quickly add in the first line as require.env, and let's configure it. It will take path, and let's give a proper path here. So we'll use process dot current working directory. So it will return the current working directory, which is D drive Marcos. But if this application run on server, it will give their current working directory. Perfect. Now let's slash and add dot env. I see few people use like very shortcuts. They don't do this. They directly like do the config. By default, it takes it, but this is the best way to do it. Okay. Now they know about this. So let's quickly store inside a variable const port like this. And if we don't found this port, then run on 3000 like this. For now, just make it 4000. So we'll understand if we don't found this value here. Let's see, save this. Let's run this application. Npm run start there. Okay, and now here also add comma port. Perfect. So we are running on 3000. So now our application knows about .env file and it started working. Fine. Now let's see one example. If we try to call some route which is not available in our applications, what will happen now? We started getting the HTML response. We don't want this. We want the response should come in JSON format, even if that route is not found. So let's quickly fix this issue. Let's go back here. And after all the routes, you need to use app.use and specify dot asterisk. So it means if no route match, this is going to match. And it will take request, comma response, comma next. Next is a middleware in Express. So we'll come on it later on. So we'll give the response from here, response dot status. Let's make it 404 not found, and we'll give in JSON response as status colon fail. Okay, message route not found. Now let's check. Now if I call this, so we started getting the response in perfect shape, even if that route is not found. If route is found, and here you could notice like we also started getting the status not found. But if we call the route which is available, we get the status 200 and we're getting the responses in JSON format. Now let's work on database integrations, and we are going to perform all the database related operations from SequelizeORM. So let's install the SequelizeORM. So this is the official website of SequelizeORM. I'm going to give the link in the description so you can follow for more information. Now click on getting started. And now first install the Sequelize. Let's run on parallel one more CMD. Now this is installed. Let's install other things. So I'm using Postgres database, so I need to install the Postgres driver. If you're using any other database like MySQL, so based on that, you can install your driver and you can follow my video after that. All the things will be the same, only the driver will be the different here. Now let's install this as well. Perfect. One more thing, go to the migration section of Sequelize, and I will highly recommend you to read all these things from this section very carefully, because this is one of the sections we use, everyone use a lot when you're building a production grade application. So let's install the Sequelize CLI first. Perfect. So in the migration section, if you go down, you'll find a file dot SequelizeRC, and copy this information from here and create a file inside the root label dot SequelizeRC and paste here. So this will tell the Sequelize CLI to create all this folder inside the DB folder and this database.json config file inside the config folder. But I don't want the database.json file. I'll use config.js because in JSON file you cannot use environment variables and we wanted to get all the credential from the environment variable. So this is bound to me to use config.json and I will recommend you to use the same as well. Now let's run the command. Let's delete the second one. Let's stop here. Let's run the command npx sequelize cli init. Now, if you notice, all the files gets created inside the DB. If you see, we have three folder: migrations, models, seeders, and inside the config we have config.json. So this object is a JSON object for now. If we write here, let's convert into the JavaScript object. So just write module dot exports equal to and save it. Now this is converted into the JavaScript object. So they will pick the credential information based on the environment. So if you are running on Node.env on development mode, this will pick this object. If you're running on test, it will pick this, and in the same way, it will pick from the production. So we just need to change the environment variable Node.env, and based on that, automatically it will pick the credentials. Now, as I said, we are not going to use these informations directly. So we'll use using process.env db username. In the same way, let's use for others. Like for password, I'll use db password. Let's copy and do the same for database name. I don't want to do any hard-coded value here, even for the host, just paste here. And one more thing, we'll use the port number. If you're using the default port, like the Postgres default port is 5432, then you don't need to specify. But if your port number is other than the default, then definitely you need to specify those as well here. Now let's change this quickly. Perfect. Now this file don't know about the env because this file is going to run by the CLI. So we need to specify, like we need to configure in the same way like we did in the app.js file. So just copy the same thing and paste here. Now they will know about these all the environment variables. Now go to inside the environment variable and define all this username, password and everything here. I already did that. Username, password, database name, host, port. You can get this like username and password when you install your database. I haven't created this database Marcos DB yet. So if the DB is not present, so let's run the command. If this user, the Postgres has the access to create DB, then it will create that if it has all the privileges. But usually you will get the database name as well. So you don't need to write this query. In the productions, you mostly get username, password, and database name. These three things you get at least. Okay. So one more thing we need to change here is dialect convert into the Postgres. So just tell that SequelizeCLI CLI, we are going to use Postgres, not MySQL. Now let's try to run it again. See that it's picked using environment variable development and created the Marcos DB. So I was talking about this .env file. If you change this to production, it will pick the production object from this config file. Now we did the integrations. Now let's complete the sign up process. So for that we need sign up model. So let's create a model here. So the command is same npx sequelize CLI model colon generate. Now specify all the fields here. First name, string, comma, and one more thing, user type. Let's add user type. It will be a enum. We will have three users in our application, which is admin, seller, and buyer. So let's create this quickly. So it will generate two files. One is migration and another is model file. We made some mistakes here. So we need to do two things here. Sequelize model generate hyphen hyphen name. We need to give a name. So we are going to give it name user and also hyphen hyphen attributes. See here. You can see these informations here. right? So we were missing these two parameters. So we pass this. Now let's hit enter. Hope this time it will create. Perfect. Here you could see there is two files created. One is the model and second is the migration file. Now inside the migration, you can see they have already generated the ID, primary key, auto increment, and user type enum. Let's add three things. 0 for the admin, 1 for the seller, and 2 for the buyer. So that will be the three times of user. First name, last name, email, password, and they have added two things, created at, updated at, and let's add one more thing. So we do the basic thing from the CLI. If we miss any field, we could also add here deleted at, because we wanted to use soft delete, so we need it. Let's define the type as well, and don't make it allow false here because this could be null values initially. This looks fine now. So let's do the same modification inside the model file. So personally, I don't like this class way to define the model, but if you like it, you can go for it. There is no problems. But Sequelize provide one more way of defining the model, which is Sequelize.define method. I'll use that one, but for that, we need to create the Sequelize object. So let's do this first. Database connections. We haven't defined that yet. So let's create one more file, name it database.js. So we'll do the connection here. So let's quickly import Sequelize class from Sequelize package. We can create the Sequelize object, Sequelize, and we need to pass the configuration here, config. So from where we'll pick the config? Obviously from this file, and based on the environment, we wanted to pick this and we'll pass inside here. So let's do that quickly. Const config require dot slash config, and based on the environment, so let's quickly create const env process.env.node.env, and if we get it, fine. Otherwise, by default, we wanted to make it development. Perfect. Now let's pass this here and pass it config here. So it will pick the config object. Now, if this is confusing you, just remove it from here and add it here. Both are same. Now we need to export this from here, module.exports Sequelize. Fine. Now we can import this inside this from the database. Fine. So we imported from here. Let's add little bit of space here. Dot define. It has a method define, and let's give the name, and it will have the same objects, which is what we have here. So let's copy the same object from the migration and go back to the model, paste it here. Now they don't know about this Sequelize. We can import this Sequelize and it will work. Perfect. So all the data types gets imported. Now let's add extra informations here. By default, Sequelize do the plural. Now if you remember that here, if you see, they make it users. I have created user, but they make it users. I don't want to change the name. I want to keep the same like what we define. So keep it user. So we need to pass the same informations. Otherwise, they will also make it plural to use inside the application. So there is freeze table name. We pass true. It will be the same. It will freeze the name. Now let's pass the model name, which is user. One more information I wanted to use here, paranoid. Let's make it true. If you specify this, it is going to enable this soft delete feature. So your actual data will not be deleted from the table. It will just marked as deleted. To make this work, you need to specify deleted as column inside the table. So then only this paranoid feature will work. So make sure that deleted at is present inside your migration file as well as in the model. Then only this feature will work. Now let's try to run the migration and see the table gets created on database or not. Let's quickly run the migration. So the command is same, sequelize db colon migrate. So what this command does, it will pick all the migration file here. Those have not been run previously. So this is the first time this file is going to run. So this will pick this file and it will create the actual table inside the database. Now, if you go to the database, just for now, I'm going to show you here. Let's quickly refresh. See, we have Marcos DB. Inside that, if we go inside the schema table, we don't have any tables for now. Now, if we run the db.migrate and let's see, hopefully it will run successfully. Perfect. So migration gets run successfully. Now, let's quickly see, just to refresh it. There is two table you could see. So sequelize meta. So this is the table keep track of what are the migration files already run. Like if I open this table, now here you could see the name of the file that is run. So by default, Sequelize keep track of all the migration file, what are the migration file already gets executed. So the next time this file is not going to execute. Now let me tell you a very important things here. In future, when you have a lot of migration files and you think you need to modify the user table, then few people may think like they will come back to this file and do the modification and rerun the migration. That will work. This is not going to work because as I already mentioned, SQLize keep track of migrations. So this file is never going to execute again. So your modification is not going to be reflected inside the table. So the way we do the modification is create a new migration file and do the alteration in that file, and that will do the real changes in your table. Having said that, SQLize also provide the migration undo command that will just do the opposite of migration. So it will revert the recently migrated files. So the command is npx SQLize CLI db migrate undo. So this will delete the recently, like in my case, it will delete the users table and delete the history. So we could rerun again the migration, but this command is fine in the development. So in my case, I could see the user table not get deleted. There must be some issue. So let me fix that. Okay, so I found the mistake here. Like when we create the migration file, if you remember, there is two method, up and down. Up is run when you do the migrate to create the table, and on the downtime I run the drop table users. It should be user. The name should be the same here in up as well as in down. So that's why our database are in inconsistent state. So let's do the run the migrate again, and this time if I'll do the undo, it will work. It will delete the user table. See, this is migrated. Now if I do the undo, it will delete the table. Perfect. It is. Now let's, this time hopefully it will work. Perfect. Now here you could see the table gets deleted. Once you do the undo, then you can do any editing into this file because this is going to rerun again. But why I was telling you not to do any editing here, because once you migrated this file into the production database, you may have the sensitive information inside this table, and doing undo, you may lose all the data from the database. Migrate and undo has one more options like all. If you wanted to migrate everything, like undo everything, then provide these options as well. Now let's run the migrate only. Perfect. So table gets created. Let's go inside the controller. So now let's remove this and start working on sign up process. So we'll get the data from the user in a JSON format. So body will get the data in request object inside the body they'll provide. Now we cannot get, so how we'll get the JSON response? So the one thing we are missing here in app.jsons, you need to use app.use and pass express.json function. So this will do the conversion of data which is coming from the request object into the JSON format. Otherwise, you are not going to get the data here. So let's come back to the auth controller. So now we'll be able to get it. Now let's first check the user who could do the sign up. Only two types of user, seller and buyer. Admin cannot do the sign up. Includes and let's check body dot user type. So if that is not one or two, then we are going to send them the response, the error response. So we'll return response dot status with 400 bad request dot JSON status colon fail message invalid user type. And if this is not the case, now we can insert the data inside the user table. Let's new user equal to, let's use the user model. From models, remember that the path. So we import this from the models user, and we'll use this one dot create, and let's pass all the information here. So what are the informations we have? User type will be body dot user type, first name colon body dot first name, last name body dot last name, email body dot email, password body dot password. Now this is ready. Let's check the condition. So now let's check the negative
New
condition
user
first and give
is
the
there. If
error
there is no
response to
error,
the user.
then
So
a
now let's
response,
copy the
something like that.
error response from here and paste it here. Failed to create the user. Now, if this is not the case, then we'll respond success. Then we'll return response dot status 201, that is for created, and in the JSON status success, and we'll return the data new user. Now let's check this. Is it working? Let's run our application. Now in the sign up, we need to pass the data in the body raw in JSON format. User type will be, let's take it as one. Password will be test 123. Now let's hit this and see. Here we could see created, and we are getting blank object. So there is something issue, but at least this is working. So let's check that. Does the data came into this table? Yes, data is coming here, but we didn't get the response. So this is the asynchronous code. Actually, it takes some times to create the database, and this is the asynchronous code. So we need to wait here. And if you're waiting here, you need to make this function as async, right? Now, this will wait to get the response back, and then it will give you the answer. So let's run it now. Perfect. Now you can see the ID 2 because I call this API 2 times, and all the information is here. And here you could see password is also stored in plain text. So now let's work on password encryption. At the time of sign up, we also take confirm password from the user, but we only store password inside the database. So let's take confirm password body dot confirm password from the user. Now let's go to the model, user model, and inside that, let's create a confirm password. Let's give comma here, and the type will be virtual. So sequelize dot virtual. So when we create any column with a virtual, so this will be used inside the program only. This is not going to be stored inside the database. If you have noticed, we don't get any auto suggestion. Like here, we don't get no suggestion is here because we are using Sequelize class. Instead of that, if we use data types, let me show you data types. This class from the Sequelize package, this will give you the auto suggestions. Like let's check here. If we type data types dot virtual, here you could see it. So now let's update all the Sequelize class and convert into the data types. Both are same. It's not a problem, but I prefer to use data types instead of Sequelize because it's give auto suggestions. Fine, I have updated all. Now, Sequelize also provide a getter and setter method. So let's use here set value if value equal to this dot password means both are same, and if both are not same, let's give the throw the error, throw new error password and confirm password must be the same. Now if both are same, now let's do the hashing. Const hash password equal to, here we are going to use a package, the name is bcrypt, that will help us to encrypt the password. So this is the official site of that package, and here you could see the weekly download of this package. So this is a very popular package. So let's use this package for password encryption and let's install inside my project. So the package installed successfully. Now let's import this package right here, const bcrypt bcrypt. Let's use this bcrypt dot, and it has a method hashing. So it will receive two things, data that we wanted to encrypt. So let's pass value here. And the second is salt. So here I'm giving 10. So 10 round of salt we will use to generate the encrypted password. Now if we get it, now let's this dot set default, use set default value to set and pass the key I wanted to set inside the password and this hash password. So before inserting into the database, the password value will be updated to the hash password and then it will be stored inside the database. Now let's make sure we have here. Now let's go back to the Postman and add confirm password and make it test 123. Apply comma here. Perfect. Now let's send this request. Oops, my server is not running. Let's start the server. Server started successfully. Now let's hit the request. And this time you could see we are getting the encrypted password. So even if password is encrypted, we never send back to the user. And also we send the token to the user. So once user done this sign up successfully, they don't need to do the login again to get the access to the application. So let's work together to remove this from the response and also add the token inside this response. So let's first delete. So the first thing I'm going to here to convert into the JavaScript object. So let's take a result equal to new user dot to JSON. So this will convert into the JavaScript object instead of model object. Don't be confused. This is not going to return the JSON string. So this will be the JavaScript object. Now we could apply delete result dot password. Let's also delete result dot deleted at from the response. And now we wanted to add result dot token. So the JSON web token we wanted to send back to the user. So we need to use the JWT package. So let's install the JSON web token package here. npm install JSON web token. So token installed successfully. Let's create a separate function generate token. It will take the payload. So let's pass the payload id colon result.id. So inside the payload, I only want to keep the ID. We could keep more informations, but let's keep ID only. And I'll get this ID when user will send the token. And based on this ID, I could get the user information from the database. So yeah, so let's define this method on top const token. And it will receive payload. And we need to import const JWT from JSON web token. Now it has a method dot sign and it receives payload. The second thing secret key I will highly recommend you to use a long and complex secret key here. Don't use a simple word like secret or something here. So like very long, but don't use the same. So it's just for the example. And the second object we use here, which is expires in JsonWebToken, we keep very long expiration time. So let's use 90 days here, days, but we don't keep these informations inside the code. Let's use this using the environment variables. So let's cut this information from here, go to environment variable, and let me do a comment here, JWT info, JWT red key, remove the single quote, JWT expire in, let's give 90 days. Now let's use this key here instead of direct value. So dot this, save this, let's copy this and also save this file. Come back here, process dot env dot paste this. So it will generate the JSON web token. Now let's return from here and let's use this function here just to generate the token. Perfect. So this will generate the token and it will add inside the result. And let's check the result instead of new user and also here update this. Now save this file and make sure you have saved env as well. Now let's run the project. Now let's go to the Postman and hit again. Now this time you see password is removed from the response object and we also added the token, but deleted at still I could see there. So let's quickly have a look here. Did we miss that? Deleted. Okay, deleted add. It's just an spelling mistake. So let's send it again. Perfect. So deleted add also removed, and we have this JSON web token. So they could use this to get the access. Now you may guys have noticed like I'm using the same email. So usually we don't use the same email to sign up more than one account. We will work on the validations later on. So now we already know how to generate the token. So let's quickly create the login functionality. Let's define one more controller, login. So we'll receive email and password from request body. Now let's check. So if either email or password is not present, then we will give the response. Passive. Please provide email and password. So now if this is not the case, it means we get the email and password from the request body. Now let's fetch the user from the database. Find one, apply where condition, email, colon, and we'll pass email. So instead of writing email, just write email. This is same. Now let's check. We get the result. If it not, it means email is incorrect. Let's give status 401, fail, email or password. Now, if this is not the case, it means we get the user. Now, let's compare the password and match. Const is, we need to use bcrypt package here. So let's import the bcrypt first. Now let's apply bcrypt.compare. It takes two things, the password which we received from the request body and the second encrypted password that we get inside the result object from the database. So let's compare both. If this is compared successfully, it will return true. Otherwise, it will return false. This returns the promise. So we need to apply await here. And if we use await, then we need to make this function async. Perfect. Now, if password match is incorrect, if we receive false, then let's apply the condition and we need to respond the same, because we cannot tell the user like incorrect email here and incorrect password. If we do that, we are going to give information to hacker that okay, they know that the only email is correct at this point of time, and here they know that only the password is incorrect. So usually we keep incorrect email or password instead of giving one by one message. Okay, so now instead of writing the same thing in two times, let's apply the same logic in one place here. Let's put not condition and let's delete it. Perfect. Now let's generate the token. We need to pass the payload, and inside the payload we'll only pass the ID from the result object dot ID. Now we get the token because we already generated this. We already have written this function, right? So now let's return the actual success response. Response dot JSON status token. Perfect. Okay, we haven't written return here. Otherwise, if you don't write the return, this part will get executed. Okay, and you'll get some error. And also we need to return from here. So this code don't execute once this is true. Perfect. Now let's export this controller from here and go to the auth route and define one more route. Router dot route login dot, this will also be a post method, and let's use login here. It's automatically imported. Now let's check that is it correct or not. Let's duplicate this. Let's rename it login. Now let's change this path to login, and inside the body we will only pass email and password, and let's remove all the other information. Now if you remember guys, we have added a lot of user with the same email, so this could be a problem. And so let's first clear the database and create only one record inside the database. So we know that how we could do this. So just run the migrate undo. It will delete the user table as well as it will remove all the records. Now let's rerun the migrate. So it will create the user table inside the database. Perfect. Now let's do sign up once. Okay, we need to run the application as well. Now let's run the sign up. ID you could see here one, and this email is registered with the password test123. Now let's go to the login. Perfect. Now let's hit the send request. We get error. Let's fix it. So the reason is we forget to add await here because it takes some time to find the user. So we get it and then we pass it. So now let's check it. And don't be worried, next we are going to learn about the validations and error handling. Now here you could see success and we're getting the token. Now let's check what happens if we don't pass any one of the fields. Please provide email or password. Now if we provide incorrect email or password. Now let's suppose we provide incorrect email. Still we receive incorrect email or password. Now if we provide everything correct, we get the token. Now let's work on error and validation. So this is one of the very important topic as a backend developer. If you miss any error or validation inside your applications, you may crash your server or can let the hackers to gain access on your server. So I will highly recommend you to watch this section at least 2 times if you have a difficulties to understand anything in this topic. But still I will try my level best to make this topic very easy for you to understand. So let's start. Let's go to the app.js. Express provide a global error handler to handle all the errors that occurs in our application. So let's define the global error handler of Express. It receives 4 parameters: error request, response next. So just for an example, let's throw the error from here. This is error. So we'll be able to catch this error in our global error handler. So let's give a response from here. Let's change this to error and let's give message as error dot message. So this error will represent the error object. So every error has a message property. And now let's check it. So if you try to access any route which is not present, so this middleware will throw the error. So see this is error. So it means we are able to catch the error. Now, there is one issue here, like if any middleware becomes async, now global error handler will not be able to catch those error. Let's check now. Now see, this error crashed the server. So how we could handle this error? Still we have a way to handle this error. We could explicitly call the next method with error arguments. So let's call this error with this argument. In this way, we'll be able to handle the error. Let's check it. See this, we are able to handle the error. So the simple means global error handler will not be able to handle the async error. But yes, we could handle those using the next function and we could pass the argument inside the next. So next has a two features in Express. You can call the next without arguments to call the next middleware, but if you pass any error objects here, it will directly call the global error handlers. So that's why our request came to here. Now sometimes error could be thrown from the third-party packages. So in that case, we'll not be able to call the next function. So let's take an example in auth controller. Inside the login, if you see that this middleware is also the async middleware. Now if the error is thrown from the Sequelize, then our global error handler will not be able to catch those errors. So in that case, we left with two options. One is try catch. So inside the every middleware, we need to use try catch to handle this situation, and inside the catch, we need to call the next with the error. But I have a better way to handle the async error. So let's create a folder, utils. Let's create a file, catch async.js. Let's create a function const catch as. So this function will receive a function because it is a wrapper function, and we will return a function from here, error handler. It has a 3 parameter request, response, next. Now inside this function, we'll call this function with this arguments, next. And this function will be async function. So we could handle async functions using dot then dot catch. So let's use dot catch. We need to pass a callback inside dot catch, and then we could call next with the error which we receive inside this error. But instead of writing this, we could write in shorthand dot catch. Instead of passing the callback, let's pass the reference of next function inside the catch. This will work in the same way. Now let's return the error handler. Perfect. Now let's wrap all the middleware with catch async function. So before that, we need to export this module dot exports catch async from here. Now let's apply first on app.js. So let's apply on this async function. Let's import this. Now let's wrap this middleware catch async. Now previously when we throw the error, it wasn't working. Now let's again, instead of return and call next, let's throw the error again. Let's see if this time global error handler will be able to catch or not. See, so this time we'll be able to handle this error. Let's just for double sure add anything here and see. Yes. So this is, so if you wrap all the middlewares with this catch async, if any error thrown from you or from the global error or from any packages, still will be able to catch those error and we could pass those error to the global error handler. We cannot give error messages directly to the client, but if the error is generated by us in the application, then we could trust the error message. But sometimes error could also be generated from the packages. So we cannot give directly error message to the client. This could have the security risk. So now let's differentiate from the error that we generate inside the application and the error that is generated from the packages or from the databases. So let's create a custom error class, name it app error.js. Let's create a class app error extends error class. Let's create a constructor. My error will receive two things, message and status code. We'll pass the message to the parent class using the super. Now let's use the status code to initialize status code. Now let's take one more property, status. So based on the status code, if it starts with 4, then we'll give fail as a status. Otherwise, we'll give status as error. Now let's add one more property to this error, is operational true. So this property will tell us that this error is a custom error that is generated by us, and if this property is missing inside the error, then probably we cannot trust to those errors. Now let's also add stack trace error dot capture trace and then pass this comma this dot structure. So this is a syntax to capture the stack trace. So you'll get the line number and file name from the where error is generated. Now this custom error class is ready. Let's export this. Now let's start using this. So let's go back to the app.js. Instead of throwing this error, let's throw our custom app error and it receives two things. So we could also pass the status code here. Perfect. Now we could send the error. Now this error has status code. So error dot status code. And now let's destructure this to send the status error dot status message error dot message and stack error dot stack. Now let's see. So if we try to access the route, now this time we see the status fail 404. This is the error and we also get the line number and file name as well. At the time of development, stack trace is very good to identify the errors and their origin. But in production, we cannot send this stack trace. So let's separate the errors for development and production. And as well as let's use the is operational property. So we haven't used is operational to identify that the trusted error or not. So before that, let's do the refactoring. Let's create a separate error controller that will be the responsible for sending all the errors.js. And instead of directly writing here, let's create a error controller const global error handler. It receives 4 parameter error, request, response, next. Now let's export this module.exports global error handler. Now let's pass this here and let's cut this. Perfect. Let's import this and go to here and define this error. Now we want to send the different message inside the development and production. So let's quickly create two methods and first check if process.env dot node env. If it's development, we'll call send error dev function and we'll pass here two things, error and response, and they'll give the response from there. Return from here and then let's call the send error prod. This will also receive two things, error and response. Perfect. Now let's define these two quickly. If we are in dev, then we don't need to worry a lot. Let's receive error, comma, response here. Let's make it as arrow function, const status code. We'll try to get it from error dot status code. If not, if that is not present, then we'll give 500 const status same error dot status. If not present, then we'll give error message error dot message, and we could also give stack trace const stack error dot stack. Fine. Now let's quickly generate the response dot status code dot json. Let's status colon, so it will be the status, then message, and finally we'll give stack as well. We don't need to check is operational or anything, because even if we leak the sensitive information, it doesn't matter because this error is going on dev environment. Now let's quickly define the same way. If it's production error, then we'll get all the informations and then we will check if error dot is is operational. If that is the case, then fine, we can return from here, but still will not give the stack trace inside the production. Fine. But if this is not the case, then probably we'll return with response dot status 500 and JSON message status. Let's give error. Message will be something went very wrong. So it means that error is not handled by us anywhere inside the application. So let's remove this from here. Let's remove this as well. Now we segregated the errors. If any error that we get it from like the Sequelize package or anything, we could convert those error into our errors so that we could handle it. So every error either will have the code or will have the name. So we will do like let error blank initially. But if you find if error dot like code, there is something 5001, something like that. I'm just giving an example here. Then we will convert those error into our error. So we'll do like error equal to new app error, and it will be converted into our errors, and then we will pass this error inside this in dev and production based on the environment. We will come to this place to handle the errors which is not generated by us. Let's check that uh, does it working or not. So please save this app.js file as well as error controller this file, and now let's check. Still it's working fine. Now if we change the environment, let's quickly change the environment. But before that we need to update this config.json as well. If we change this to production, then it will pick this information and this is not the correct information. So let's quickly just copy this for now. But we are 100% sure in production this information will be different. This is not going to be same. Now let's go to the env. Instead of development, let's make it production. Fine. Now save this. Now again this save any of the file just to reload the server. We save this. Now if we try to run this again, this time we are not going to get this stack trace. So we are not going to leak any information to the client. Now, if in production application we get this error, it means that error is unhandled. That's why we reach to this point. So the best way is to just do the log before it, so that if anyone complains about that, they are getting something went wrong error. So you can look into your logs to identify that from where this error is originated, what is the message, and the stack trace. So you can keep this inside your logger so that you could quickly fix those error. Now let's refactor the code. So let's start from the app.js. So the first thing, let's remove this. We added this initially just to check that server is running or not. Let's remove the space from here and let's update this. Route is not found. Or we could give better message like this. Can't find the requested URL on this server. So it will give more information. Now let's go to the auth controller and wrap our sign up with catch async. Catch async wrapper function. Now instead of giving direct response from here, let's throw the error, new app error, and here we'll pass this message, invalid user type and 400 as bad request. Now let's delete it. Now in this case, I made a mistake here. Like if you add the token and if we check this condition, we'll never reach to this point. So let's update those two here, or let's do it even before this, but check new user. So here also, instead of giving direct response from here, let's throw or call the next. If we're calling the next, so we could return and call like next and generate new app error. Both will work. 400. Perfect. Now, if everything is fine, we'll give them the success response. So this is done. Let's apply on login as well. And let's refactor it as well. The same way here, let's return and call next. 400. Now we don't need this one. So let's do here same thing. Perfect. Now this is also gets updated. Now let's quickly check everything is working or not. Let's start from the sign up. Let's call this sign up route. It's working fine. If this is not matching, something went very wrong. We get this error. Okay, now let's go to the console because we haven't saved this actually. So let's save this again and let's call again. Now here we could see this error, password and confirm must be the same. And this error we occur from the user.js line 3827. So let's see this, how we could fix it. Go to the line 37 error. Instead of throwing this error, let's throw app error and type like 400 bad request. Now let's see, are we able to get perfect password and confirm password must be same. Does login working? Can't find the, here you could see this is the message, can't find the app login this on the server. Perfect. Now let's remove this and do the login. Yes, here we are getting this. Now let's work on validation and constraints. So the first of all, let's understand the difference between validation and constraint. So validations are checks performed in Sequelize level in pure JavaScript. So if validation fails, no SQL query will be sent to the database at all. Perfect. On the other hand, constraints are the rule defined at SQL level. The most basic example of the constraint is unique constraint. So what it means, if you wanted to define any constraints, like take an example, in our case, we are going to define email as unique. So we could only use one email for one account. So in that case, we need to update the migration file. But if you're defining any validations, you don't need to update the migrations. You can directly define inside the SQL model. And that will be enough. You don't need to touch the migration. But let me also explain you the not allow null validation. So this is the only validation that is mix of both, which is validation and constraint. So if you allow in migration file, this will update not null in SQL. And if you miss that, if you apply only on model, then it will do the validation in JavaScript only and it will not fire the queries. Let's apply in our projects validation and constraint. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to only apply unique key constraint on migration. So as we know, this migration is not going to run. So let's do the undo first and then run the migration. So this will update the unique key constraint. Now we done the undo migration. So it means our table and data has been deleted. So let's first create the record. So we have created successfully. If we try it again, what will happen? Let's see. So we something went very wrong. It means the error is not handled yet. Let's see what we get inside the console, because in error handler, if you remember guys, if we get any things, we do the console, error name, message and stack as well. So let's see what the error name is. So Sequelize unique constraints, we didn't handle it. So let's handle it here. So if error.name to this, then we know that this error is thrown from the email. So email must be unique. So let's update the error equal to new app error, and inside the error dot errors 0, you'll get the message. So which is message this one, and let's also give 400 status code. Perfect. Now let's try it again. Does it resolve? Yes, it is resolved. Email must be unique. So in this way, we can handle the unhandled errors. Now let's apply validation inside the user model. Validate, and inside this object, let's apply starting from not null, and let's give custom error message null. User type cannot be null, but this will not work. Now here you could see we get the error. So not null will only work if we apply allow null false. So as I said, allow null is a mix of both. Uh, validation and constraint. That's why we apply outside of this validate. Otherwise, we all the validations we apply inside this validate. So let's see, like we apply not empty. This will also take an object, and let's give custom message here. User type cannot be empty. In the same way, let's copy this from here and apply the same thing inside the. And inside the email, we'll apply one extra is email. And let's give custom message invalid email ID. Now let's copy in the same way. Let's apply inside the password. Password cannot be null. Now we wanted to apply one more thing. So due to some reason, I'm not sure why this length property is not working. So we also wanted to apply the validation inside the password. So length must be greater than 7. So still, if this is not working, I have another way to apply the same logic. So I'm going to apply inside here. So if the password length is less than 7, we will throw this error, and we will also give 400 as status. But if you know and if you get the solutions, please write it down inside the comments so others could also take the help from your comments. Okay. Now we did the validations, I think. Now this time is to let's check the validation. Does it working or not? So we set the first name as null just to check my validation is working or not. So here we see something went very wrong. So it means we haven't handled this error. So let's see inside the console. So we need to handle sequelize validation error. So let's apply here quickly. So error name, sequelize validation error. And if we get this error, so let's convert those into our own custom error so that we'll be able to handle it. Now let's save it again. Let's send the request. We have first name null, then first name cannot be null. Let's make it first name empty. C, first name cannot be empty. Perfect. If we find the add the name test. Now let's see what errors we get it. It is created successfully with the ID. Now, if we hit the same thing again, email must be unique. We have started getting this. If we reduce the length of the password, password must be greater than the length 7. So all the validations are working fine. So now let's generate the project model. At this point of time, we already know how to generate the model and migration file. So here I'm going to execute SQL Sequelize model generate. Name of the model is project, and attributes just I'm taking title, and the rest of the missing attribute will add directly inside the migration file. So let's quickly generate. So it's generated two file, model and migration. So let's quickly update the migration file before running the migration. So here we just have the title, ID, title, created at, updated at, and let's add all the missing fields here. So here I've added all the missing fields, including the allow null constraint. So as I already explained, allow null is a constraint, and constraints usually we apply on the database level. So that's why I have applied here allow null inside the migration file. So if you have any constraints, you have to apply inside the migration, then only it will be applied on database level. So on title is featured. So if this is true, then this project will be listed inside the featured section. Product image, this will be array of a string. So you can upload more than one product images. Price, the data type will be decimal. Allow null is false. Short description, so basically we have two kind of descriptions, short and long. So short we will use to show inside the list, and long description we will use when user will click inside the product and they could see the complete detailed description of the product. Product URL, so basically I'm assuming that you will have a separate API to upload the product, whether it is a PDF, images or video, and then you'll get the URL from there and you can upload here. Category, this will also be array of a string. Tag, array of a string. Created by, so this is a foreign key. So here I have applied the references model. It will be user, not capital U, because my model name is user, and the key is ID. that we wanted to refer here. So this is a reference key. So this is the way you can define the reference key. Created at, updated at, and deleted at. So if you wanted to use soft delete features, paranoid true, then you need to define deleted at. Then only it will work, otherwise it will not. And one more thing guys, as previously also we faced, by default Sequelize do the plural names, they use the plural names. So let's convert these names into the singular. I don't want to update the name, table name. So this will be project. This will down will also be the project. Fine. Now let's quickly run the migration and see npx equalize CLI db migrate. So this migrated successfully. Now, if you have noticed, this used the production environment. So because last time we have updated Node.env to production. So let's do the development. And just for your knowledge, if you remember that in production and development, both are connected to the same database. So that's why we don't need to run the remigrations. It's fine. So in the same way, let's update the model. So let's delete this way. We'll use module.exports, Sequelize object, define, give the name project, and here it is. I have defined all the ID, title, and everything. But this time I just use data types instead of Sequelize. Just import this. So this will be imported from the Sequelize package, data types. And I have just applied the validation in the same way like we have applied in user table. So just few new validations that I have applied here. In is features, I have applied is in. The value should be either true or false. And if this is not the case, we'll return error with this message. In the same way, product images, price, we have applied and is decimal. So this is little new here. Don't be worried. This code will be inside my GitHub repo. You can take the pull to get all this code. Description, and here I have applied is URL. So if product URL should be in string and that string should match to URL. So if that is not the case, we'll return with this error message. Category and everything is our same. Now let's add the additional information with this table. First one is paranoid. So this will enable the feature of soft delete. And to work the paranoid, make sure that at least inside the migration you have defined deleted at. Even if you don't define inside the model, that is perfectly fine. But this feature use that deleted at column. Okay. Next, let's use freeze table name. Make it true so that this will not do the plural of this name project. So this will be freezed. Now let's give model name here, which is project. Perfect. Now let's create the project controller. Now let's define a controller here. Const create project and wrap this function with catch async. Async, it will take request, response, next. We'll get the data from body. So let's receive request.body const new project await project model. It has a method create in same way like we did for the user. Now let's define all the fields here. So I'm going to pause this video and I'll complete for you. Now we have defined everything, title and features. We'll get all this information from the body, but will not get created by from the body. We need to pull this information from the token. So once user do the login and then they will call this route. So we'll get this information from their token. So later on, I'm going to complete this feature. Just for now, I have added ID1 so that it do not throw any errors. Otherwise, it will start throwing errors because this is allow null is false, right? Now, if this doesn't throw any error, we could return the success from here. Response dot status 201 dot JSON status data new project. Perfect. Now, if it fails any validations, this catch will catch the error and we could get the error from error controller. So now let's check this is working or not. But before that, we need to define the route as well. So let's go to the route and create project route.js. In the same way we defined the route for this, let's just copy from here, paste here, delete all these, and even delete this. Now let's create a route. So I'll use router.route and let's define slash route dot post method we'll use for create project. I think we haven't exported this controller, so we need to export this. So let's quickly export from here, module.exports inside an object, create project. Then let's import here. Perfect. Now this route is not linked with app.js. Let's quickly link here in the same way, and this will be projects. Okay. Now let's do copy paste, update this file name, project route, and name it project router project. Perfect. Now let's run this application. Now let's create a separate folder inside this Marcos collection. Name it project. Let's add a request here. This will be create and method will be post. Now let's use the same URL, but this will be different. Projects slash, and inside the body, let me, it would be in JSON format. So this will be the object title, product image. Inside the array, I have just passed two dummy images. Is featured. I think we don't need to pass this from here. So let's delete it. If we pass, so is feature true or false? That will be the job of admin. I don't think so. We need to do it from the user side. So let's quickly fix that issue. So inside the project controller, if you're taking is featured, just let's remove it. So by default, it will be false. Fine. Now let's come back here and that will be false. So product image, price, short description, long descriptions we have given, product URL and category tags, and we didn't pass the created by, that will automatically take. Let's hit. So we could see here is featured false by default, ID 1, and this is created, and here we could see created by 1. So this is because we passed intentionally here. Now let's quickly check that everything is working or not. So if product URL is some wrong or something like that, let's see invalid product URL. We see this message, right? So validations are working. Now let's quickly work on the user validation. So this route shouldn't be public. As of now, if you see, I don't need to do the login to call this route. But if we are not a logged in user, this shouldn't work. We should get error. So let's quickly work on those. So inside the auth controller, let's create one more controller, const authentication. Again, it will be wrapped with catch async. It will take three things: request, response, next. We'll do the authentication in three steps. The first one will get the token from headers. Second step will be token verification. Third step will be get the user detail from DB and add to request object so that we could use in next middleware. Now let's quickly get this. So let's define let ID token as a blank string. Now let's write a condition here if request dot headers dot authorization, if that is there, and request headers authorization string starts with bearer, then ID token we could get it from this. This string will be something like this. Let me give you the example here. It will be bearer and the token, something like this. So we just wanted this part of the token, not this bearer one. So let's do dot split based on this space. So we wanted to split this into the based on this space. So this will be the index 0 and this will be the index 1. So let's pick index 1. Now let's apply the here if ID token is not available, it's missing, then we will return with the error message, please log in to get access. Now, if this is not the case, it means we get the token. Then the next step will be the verification. So let's quickly do the verification here. Const. So after doing the verification, we'll get the token detail. So how we do that? JWT dot verify. It will take token. So here we need to pass the ID token that we get from the headers. And the second, we need to pass the secret key. If you remember, this is our JWT secret key. So token plus secret key, we need to pass to verify that token is valid or not. So process.env dot the secret key. If we pass it and if it is correct, we'll get the token here. Now, if we find any issue in verifying the token, or let's take an example, token is not valid, then we will throw the exceptions from here that we could handle inside our error controller. So let's quickly add the handler here. If we throw the exception, so this will be the JsonWebToken error and we could get it, and then we'll respond invalid token from here with 401 status. But if that is not the case, let's come back to the project controller, sorry, auth controller. Then if we don't get it error from here, we'll get the token detail. So based on the detail, we could find the user's information from the database. So let's get it const fresh user dot find by primary key, and from token detail dot id we'll get the id from here. If you remember that at the time of generating the token inside the payload, we pass token. So from the token, we'll get the ID. That ID we need to pass to get the user detail from the DB. And this detail will add inside the request object. But before that, let's put one more condition here, fresh, and then return here, next, new app error, user no longer exists, and with 400 error. Now, if this is not the case, then finally we could add token inside the request object, request.user equal to fresh user, and then let's call the return with next method. So this will call the next middleware. Now we could apply this authentication. So first of all, we need to export this from here. Now let's apply this inside the project route. So before this middleware, we wanted to call this authentication middleware, and let's import this. So this will do the authentication. If this authentications run successfully, we call the next at the end. So we call the next. So this method will call the next middleware. But if we call this next with error object, then it will skip this middleware and directly it will call to this global error handler. So now hope you have understand the meaning of next. Now let's quickly check that it is working or not. Now if I call it, please log in to get the access, and we are getting the error, not the status, and here we are getting the 500. So let's quickly fix this issue, why this is the case. So here we didn't pass the code, so the code will be 401 unauthenticated access. Yeah, now started we getting the status fail, 401 unauthorized access. Now if we do the login successfully, then take this token and pass inside the create. Let's save this, and inside the headers let's apply bearer token and pass the token here. Now here we could see ID2, so the product is created. Now if we alter the token, what will happen? invalid token. Now only one thing left here. Now inside the project controller, instead of passing this ID hard coded, let's get this value from the token const user ID equal to request.user.id, because we have added this user inside this request and we could get it the ID. So now let's pass this ID inside here. Now let's do one more thing. Let's register with a different user, sign up. So I'm registering with this email ID and with this detail. Let's send this request. Now let's use this token. Now remember that ID is 10. Go to the create, pass the token and hit the send success. Now here if you see created by is null actually. Let's fix this issue. So basically I found two issues. The first one, which shouldn't get the null. So inside the migration we forget to apply allow null here. If you apply anything here, we need to rerun the migration, and before that we need to do the undo. And also inside the authentications we didn't apply await here. So yeah, these two issues were there. Now let's quickly do the remigration, undo. It will delete the project table. The recent migration, it's not going to delete the user table. So here you could see it's reverted this. Now let's rerun the migration again. Perfect. Now let's run it. Now let's call this. And here we could see it's created by ID 10. Still we are missing important things here. So we did the authentications and we make sure that this route will only be accessed by the authenticated user. But we have three kinds of user: admin, seller, and buyer. All will be the authenticated in our application. So anyone can call this route, but I want this route should only be called by the seller. They could only create their projects, not admin and not even by the buyer. So how we could protect this route from these two different types of users? So we call these things authorization. So we only want to give authorizations to the seller. So let's quickly work on authorization. So inside the auth controller, I'm going to create const restrict to, and it will receive user type to whom we wanted to give permissions in an array format, and from here we'll return check permission, and it will return middleware request response next. And inside here we'll check if user type dot includes request dot user type. Now if this is confused you, don't worry, I'll explain you just now. So we will receive to whom we wanted to give permission. So maybe like 1 and 2. So we'll receive inside an array 1 and 2, and we will make sure that the user that do the login have the same ID which is inside this array. So those user will only get the access. If this is not the case, we are going to return error with this message: you don't have permission to perform this action with 403 status. And if this is the case, then let's call the next method. Otherwise we will hang, the request will not go to the next middleware. Fine. Now let's export this from here. And now let's apply inside the route. So after the authentications, we'll apply restrict to, and we could pass the ID to whom we wanted to give permissions. So they will only be able to access. So for now, I'm just giving permission to the seller. But if you wanted to give permission to buyer, let's add buyer, or in that way, you could add the parameter here. So we'll call this method. So now for now, just give only permission to one, and this will return this check permission. So actually we are getting error because we didn't return it from here. So just right after this function, return this check permission. Perfect. Because this post method always receives here middleware. So this is also middleware. This should also be middleware, or either middleware or this should return a middleware. So I returned a middleware from here, and this is also middleware. So we call next from here to reach to this, and here we check the permission, and if this is correct then we call the next, Now let's check it. Let's call this. So it's created successfully because we have the permission. Now let's change the permission for now. And we don't want give permission to the seller. Let's only give it to user 0. Now we know the seller user type is 1. You don't have permission to perform this action. So we successfully created the authentication as well. So let's change this again to 1. Fine. Now let's work on get all projects route. So go to the project controller and let's create here const get all project catch async next. Now let's get the result from await project dot find all, and then just for now let's return response.json status data colon result. Now let's export this from here. Now let's define one more route. So we define the post route, get route here dot get. This will also be protected. So authentication is required for this one, and then we will call get all project. But for now we didn't restricted this to admin. So like after some time we will restrict this only for the admin user. But just check this is working or not. So let's duplicate this get all. Let's change this to get. Now, do we have bearer token? Let's call it. So here we could see data is coming in an array format. Now let's take an example. Admin call this route, but he don't know who is user 10. So we also want to get the user information. So for that we need to work on associations. So let's quickly work on association first. So go to the user model, and here we will define the association. So before that we need to do something. Let's give a name. So instead of doing directly export from here, const user, and export we will do at the end user, and before it let's define the association. You can read more about in official documentation. So has many projects. Each user could have many projects, right? Foreign key. What is the name? Created by. Now let's define the reverse of it as well. Like project belongs to user. Perfect. And here also define the foreign key, which is foreign key created by. Now always remember that you don't have to do this in the project here. Like I have seen few people do like has many defined here and project and try to define here. Then you will see the error because it will stuck in circular dependency. So just define in one place, either here or inside the project. Fine. So we defined this. Now project controller, and here find all. Here we will also define the include user. Now let's call this route. If this time we call this route, you will see user detail as well here. So in SQL we call it join. So we did the join of two table, and based on that we found the informations here. Now let's work on get project by ID. So inside the project controller, it will be very similar to what we already have created get all projects. So let me do the copy paste here, change the name, get project by ID. Now here we'll receive an ID from params const project ID request.params.id, and this ID we need to pass inside find by pk, and we'll also give include option, and the rest will be the same. Now let's export this. Now let's create the route project controller. We need to define a new route router dot route and it will receive colon ID, and then we'll call get authentication user only can access this, and get project by ID. Perfect. Now let's check this. So if we pass the project ID, which is to ID 2 here, so we only get the project ID, which is ID2, and with all the details. Just a small update here. We missed one condition here. So let's apply the condition here is if we don't found the result, then we need to give a error message invalid project ID. It means project ID is not perfect. That's why we don't get the result. Now let's come back to the Postman, and here also we need to update this. So instead of calling from get all, let's create a separate route. Just update this. Now let's duplicate this one. Get by ID. Inside here we also need to do the bearer token. So token is already added. Now we wanted to pass the ID. We could directly pass ID here, or we could also create a variable ID, and inside the param you can pass the value. Like I wanted to get 1. Let's send the request. Can't find the URL project 1. Okay. Now let's pass 2. So we have some issues. Let's solve this. Okay. So because we are sending the post requests, let's convert this into the gate and send it. Now here you could see it's working. If we change the ID here, it will start working. So the developer could easily understand that this is the params. Now let's work on update project catch async. It will receive request response next. Now let's get first user ID from the request dot user dot ID. Let's get project ID request dot params dot ID. Get all the data from body that we wanted to update body. Now let's first find result equal to await project dot find by pk, and here let's pass the project ID. Now let's check that did we get the result. If we don't, then we will return that the ID is invalid. Next, with new app error invalid project ID with 400. Now, if this is not the case, it means we get the result. Now let's update one by one each and everything. Now one by one we try to update everything. Result title, we'll get this from the body title in the same way we did for everything. Now once this is done, now let's get const updated result. Let's call await result dot. We have one method save, so it will update the record. Now we can response back to the user. So let's do the response from here, and we'll give them updated result. Fine. Now let's go back to the Postman. Let's duplicate to the create. Let's name it update. And here we need to pass ID as well. And this method will be patch. So we haven't defined the route, I think. So let's quickly define the route. Let's first export this from here. Now let's go back to the project route. In the same params one, we will define dot patch. This also must be authenticated users, authentication, and then we'll call update project. Perfect. Now let's come back here inside the Postman. Now let's do here. So what project ID we wanted to update. So we wanted to update 2, and inside the body we'll give them the name. So what is the project ID 2 we have? So we have title attendance management system. So let's just update to the title and not others. So, but still we need to send all the details. So let's go back to the patch, side the body. Instead of attendance, we'll give them final year project. Price, let's update to 30. Final year final year project. So I have updated few information. Let's send the request. Fail. We need the login access. Let's pass here bearer token. So we have updated final year project. Now we have missed the minor conditions here. So if you remember that we use find by PK and project ID. So if anyone wanted to update this project, they could update, but we want that those who created this project can only update that. So instead of find, let's do find one. Now let's apply a where condition where ID project ID created by user ID. Then only this should get updated. So this will work. Now in the same way, let's define deleted add. Let's just do the copy paste, change the name, delete project. It will receive in the same way. It will check the condition instead of update. Now here we'll call the destroy. So this will delete the record. So once that is deleted, we don't need to send them any. So instead of the result, we'll just send them message record deleted successfully. Now let's export this as well. Now let's define a route. Now let's call delete authentication is required and delete project. Perfect. Now let's check this. Duplicate this. Let's name it delete. Give the method delete as well. And here ID I wanted to give 1. Let's call this. Please log in to get access. Let's pass the bearer token. Record deleted successfully. So probably this is the token. Now if we call it invalid project ID. Now if we wanted to delete project ID, let's see what are the available project ID we have. Project ID 3, which is created by 10. Now let's go back to the delete. Now let's save this. Inside the params, we are going to pass ID3 invalid project ID. Now if we pass the correct signature here, if we change that to the token of created by 10, so this is the user token of the user ID 10. So if we call it, then this time it will delete successfully. So this is working fine. Now let's restrict this access to only to the sailors. They cannot get all projects. Okay, and here also we need to apply one more condition, which is where created by will be user ID. Now we could get the user ID const user ID from request.user.id. So this the condition will apply and then we'll get all the projects in the same way. Now let's come back here and we restricted this only to the seller, not to the buyer. That's why we applied 1. In the same way, let's apply this to all other routes. So these are the routes will only be accessed by the seller, not by the buyer. Now let's apply here as well. Now let's quickly check that it is working or not. Let's start from get all post. So based on the user ID, we'll get only those records that is created by 10. Now if we change the login and we try to log in from this, let's see, does we have anything for this user? Does this have any projects? No. Now let's create a project based on this user ID. So he created one. Now let's come back here, get all, and call this. Now here we could see one record. Now let's work on the seed. So seed is used to add some default data into the tables. So in our case, we have a sign up process. Through the sign up, we could do the sign up for seller as well as for the buyer, but we don't have any way to sign up the admin user, and we don't want that admin user should go through the sign up process. We wanted to feed the admin user detail into the tables directly through the seed. And Seed also have a lot of uses in testing. So take an example, if you're doing the application testing, then in that case, probably you need to feed a lot of data related to user, related to projects, that all of the data you wanted to feed into your application, then you will perform the testing. And once your testing is done, you wanted to delete it. For this use cases, if you wanted to go through the like manual process, are you going to insert all those data through the queries? No. So we use Seeder to feed all the data into the applications. Once we are done, we like in the migration, we run down and it will delete all the data. So here you could see the example how to feed the data into the tables. So let's quickly create a seed file inside our application, and I'm going to give the name seed to admin user. So it's created seed file inside the seeder folder. Here it is. Now let's copy and paste from the example that we get here. Let's come back here. Now let's paste this and let's delete everything. Now we have first name, last name. We also have email. So let's give it like admin@example.com. We have created and updated it. This time we need to explicitly pass this information because this data is directly going into the database. It's not going through the model. Let's use password as well here. So here I'm giving like admin@1234. So as I said, this data is directly going into the database. This is not going through the model. So whatever the validation we applied inside the model, this is not going to be executed when we run the seeder file. So even the hashing of the password will not happen. So we need to do that hashing explicitly inside the seeder. So let's do the password hashing. So instead of passing the plain password directly here, let's use a variable. Let password, and then we'll pass this password into the hash and salt. Now let's change this name. This will be user. Here also update the user, and we also want to pass the user type. So this is for the admin user. So that's why the user type will be 0. Fine. Now let's apply the condition at the time of delete. Admin user value 0. So it will, if we run like seeder undo, then it will run this query and it will delete all the user which has a user type 0. We don't want to keep the sensitive information, email and password directly here. We will do this through the env variable. So let's update here. So let's use this email. So instead of directly typing here, let's use process.env.this. And in the same way, let's use for password. Let's apply here and we'll apply this password test@1234. Test, and we'll pass this password inside this, and then this hash password will pass here. Now I think our seeder file is ready. So if you want to hide all the informations, you can do it. Get this information from the env file. So even the developer will not be able to know that what is the admin email and their password, because this env file at the time of deployment, admin will modify according to their needs. Now this is done. Now let's run the command, which is npx sequelize cli db colon seed colon all. Now one more thing, by default Seeder don't keep track of all the Seeder files that already been executed. Let me quickly explain you what I'm telling you. So now here in the storage, there is three kind of storage Sequelize used for migration as well as for the Seeder. So for the migration, by default storage is Sequelize. So all the migration detail keep track inside the table. And in Seeder, by default is none. Means they don't keep track of the executed Seeder files. So, but for the seeders, if you wanted to store, you wanted to keep track of seeder file as well, then probably you need to use seeder storage. And let's go to the config. Now here I have already specified seeder storage Sequelize. So that our seeder information will be stored. Like what are the seeder files already gets executed will be stored inside the database. Now let's run this. Bcrypt is not defined. So let's quickly go back here, and yes, this is not defined. Const. Now let's run the seeder command one more time. Hopefully this time it will execute successfully. So seeder file migrated successfully. Now let's come back to the PG admin and refresh this and see we have 4 table sequelize data as well. So this table keep track of all the seeder file that already been executed. Now here we must see the name of that file. We could see it here. Now if you go to the user table, here you could see we have added the admin. The type is 0, name is this, and their password is also encrypted. So this is the way we could feed the data. Now let's run this application. Now we can do the login using the admin user as well. So let's grab the admin email ID and come back to the login. Go to the login, and this time let's pass email, and the password will be test@1234. If this is correct, we should be able to see incorrect email and password. Let's quickly fix this issue. Now, actually, I made a mistake. I haven't saved that. So it looks like the previous informations. They haven't picked this information. So I have saved now, and I have saved this file as well. So, yep. So this mistake, we need to run the undo first. So it is reverted. Now let's quickly check that. Does it reverted successfully? Yes, here you could see that admin user information is deleted. Now let's rerun this reader again. Now hopefully this time we should see here the correct information. Yes, @example.com. Now this is correct. Now let's go back to the login and hope this will work. It fails. Okay, because we didn't run the application. Now let's run it. Perfect. Now here we could see the admin token. Woohoo, congratulations. So we are almost done with the projects. So we just need to add few more routes, and this will be the same process that we learned throughout this video. So let me quickly show you that I have created a new controller, user controller. So this controller will only be access to the, I'll give this route access only to the admin user. So only admin user could call this controller. And here I wanted to find all the user details, and we wanted to return to the admin. But here I have also applied the condition that this result should not include the admin details, because admin is calling this route and we don't want to give their detail also inside the list. So that's why we excluded this using the Sequelize, and you need to import this from the Sequelize package, and it has an operator not equal to. So we have different types of operators. You can look into the documentations. Now here we excluded the attributes password. We don't also want to send the password in the list, and then we return from here, and we define the user route here, and we provided authenticated and restricted to 0, and then we call this, and this is has a get method. Now let's come back to the Postman. Here I have already created a folder user. Inside this I have created a request get all user, and here you need to pass the admin token, then only you'll be able to get this data. If you pass like some other user details, mm, take an example, we want, let's get this user detail like test. Let's do the login. Test 123. Incorrect email and password. Let's do test@123. Okay, test 123. Now if we try to call this route with this token, this will not work. You don't have permission to perform these actions, and we are getting this message. So yeah, so thank you so much for watching this video till the very end. Please like, share and subscribe my channel.